Of related to all of these questions, because there are people in it because their cases, we're going to see dollar debasement and all of these different things. And I think increasingly are people in it after hearing what you and Stan Druckenmiller said last fall and realizing the institutional interest is just going to keep growing and growing. And they just figure they'll ride that wave. Bitcoin is now up, I think, so when we spoke, I want to say it was around 14. So it's up about 4 times since we spoke in value. How much more upside is there? Even if you think there's upside, is there a lot more upside, do you think?
It's too bad we had video difficulties because I was going to have my Bitcoin hat on when you answered that. Bitcoin baseball cap. So I mean, Bitcoin. There are many different ways to look at Bitcoin. The simplest one is just supply and demand. You mentioned the mainstreaming of it and the institutional acceptance of it, and I think supply is growing 2% a year, and demand is growing faster. That's all you really need to know, and that means it's going higher. So I think that it's going to have these kinds of volatile days. It was down 20% peak to trough over the weekend. But back in 2017, which was a bubble, I don't think this is a bubble at all in Bitcoin. I think this is now the beginning of a mainstreaming of it. But even back then during the bubble, it went down 20% on 5 different occasions. So volatility is with Bitcoin. Volatility is the price you pay for performance, and I think that I think it's like digital gold. That's the first stop in it. And gold is about a $10 trillion asset category, and Bitcoin's $1 trillion, and it's infinitely divisible, or almost so. It's easily transportable and can be sent anywhere in the world if you have a smartphone. So it is a much better version as a store of value than gold. And then there's $15 trillion of negative yielding bonds out there. Why would you have that when you could own something that at least has the potential to go up?
Mm-hmm. And do all of these arguments then extend to other cryptos? A lot of people are now, I look at whether it's videos on social media or you name it. I mean, there's this constant interest in chasing the next big crypto performer, and a lot of them are up even more, way more in some cases than Bitcoin. Do you dabble in any of those, or do you just stick with Bitcoin?
No, I don't fiddle around with any of those others. There's a lot of good theoretical work done on lock-in and path dependence in technologies. Brian Arthur at Stanford is one of the leaders in that area. He's also written another book called The Nature of Technology. But effectively, when you have a technology like Bitcoin, what happens is that there's a explosion of new technologies that come along with it. So now we have about 8,000 or 10,000 of these ICOs. But eventually, those things lock in, and there's a dominant company, or a dominant entity, and that's why the antitrust people are going after Amazon and Google and Facebook, and because those companies are so dominant, and I think Bitcoin will be the dominant technology in this emerging asset category.
Company's Venmo app will now allow its 70 million customers to buy, hold, and sell cryptocurrency. Now, the rollout begins today, and it's going to be available to all customers in the next few weeks. The app will also feature guides and videos that help answer commonly asked questions about cryptocurrency. But this could, see a huge surge into this space. This is what we had talked about in the fall when PayPal, the owner of Venmo, said they were going to allow people to first get into this. And given the demographic on Venmo, even relative to PayPal, you could see a lot more action really starting today. So we're gonna keep our eyes on all of that. We are watching the price of Bitcoin, as we mentioned earlier, in the Squawk Stack. You're looking at Bitcoin now trading. We're still in the mid-50s at this point, down at $272,000.
At this Shanghai shopping mall, Lu Heng is testing out China's new digital currency. It's safe, convenient, and it works, he says. Paying with digital yuan feels similar to WeChat or Apple Pay. You use your mobile phone. Less tech-savvy people can get a credit card-like card, but the digital yuan isn't a payment system. It's actual money. The digital yuan is issued by the central bank, just like paper notes. It resembles cryptocurrency in that it's computer code and is stored in a digital wallet. But unlike crypto, eCNY is tied to the Chinese government, fixed to the physical yuan at a rate of 1-to-1. Physical yuan is hard to track. The digital yuan is meant to allow the government to keep an eye on money flows. It can also be programmed, for example, to expire to encourage people to spend. Those controls don't worry Lu, who thinks the digital yuan offers greater privacy than China's payment platforms. That means the new currency could pose a threat to companies like Tencent and Ant Group. My personal information and purchasing data is already in the hands of big tech, he says. Shops that use WeChat and Alipay need to pay processing fees. The digital yuan is free.
And at the mall that Lu and I visited, you could pretty much buy everything there with digital yuan. If you wanted to get an entire outfit from the Burberry store, you could do it with digital yuan. But I think the true test is really going to be when and how Beijing allows international transfers, because that could be potentially destabilizing. Guys?
Right, and Eunice, international transfers is sort of besides the point, right? Because Bitcoin has really emerged as an asset class, not something to be used to pay for things yet. The digital yuan, though, it's interesting because its primary purpose is to pay for things. So in that sense, how could this be a threat to the US dollar? Isn't it just sort of a way for the Chinese central bank to more keep tabs on its population?
That's one potential goal of the Chinese government. But another goal that people talk about here is that the Chinese government might want to really digitize the entire economy, have the entire economy run on digital yuan as opposed to the physical yuan. But in terms of the digital yuan really being a risk to the U.S. dollar dominance, it's not really seen that way here, mainly because the digital yuan is more of a mirror of the physical yuan. It's like a surrogate. So it still comes under and is expected to come under the same controls that the physical RMB is under. So no, free trading or anything like that. And that way, that could really make it difficult for the renminbi or the digital renminbi to challenge the U.S. dollar dominance. That said, there is something that you can do with the digital yuan that was kind of interesting, because I can actually transfer digital yuan to someone else with or without an internet connection directly if I wanted to. And that's if both people have a digital wallet. And that's something that is kind of being talked about here as a bit of an end around for U.S. sanctions, in case, for example, you're a Chinese official who might have some issues and not want to have the U.S. government see all these transactions that run through the traditional, SWIFT and financial system. So that is potentially something that could happen, but a lot of big questions right now about the digital yuan.
Eunice, I find myself with this, as with many things when it comes to China's system, when it comes to tracking, horrified and fascinated at the same time. This seems to be the opposite of what's happening with crypto over here. This is a super centralized currency for people who trust the government but don't trust companies. Also, this idea of an expiring currency. I wonder what would happen if the U.S. were to put out stimulus with an expiring currency that made it hard for people to save it. Would people trade it for less money that they could save? Would it really stimulate the economy? So many questions.
So many questions, and something that actually is being discussed worldwide. I mean, China isn't the only one that's talking about having a digital currency, and there are a lot of people here who follow the digital currencies and said that this is something that other countries should be doing. And, privately they say that probably other countries would want to do that so they could have full visibility on transactions of their citizens and of criminals. So there could be potentially some good uses for this. But at the same time, China, because it has such controls here over the financial system, might be in a much better place to be able to roll this type of system out in a more successful way than other countries.